Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
I'm going to read from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 5, verse 32.
Would it be louder a bit?
Hare, yeah, it could be on, I guess.
It's on.
It's on.
What is wrong with electricity? We have to change the whole setting.
Ключика?
Just right, just there.
Бацик там?
Just sometimes works. Yeah, чуть добрая идея. Yeah, це голос.
Снимаш, банановый.
Anyhow, I'll read the verse anyhow. You have it's Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 5, text number 32. Tat sushushidam brahmans tapatraya chikisitam edishwari bhagavati karma brahma vipaditam. One thing you can all do is just move up.
Maharaj, can you just repeat the verse? I will give her the...
Yeah, could you all just move up?
Oh yeah.
I'm a vegetarian, I don't fight anyway.
Можете да дойдете ближе.
I found out
Closer.
error. So they if you move up, you get wireless credit. Can you hear now? Is it easier?
It's still not loud enough for me to sound reasonable. I don't know, maybe.
Okay, Rahul.
Hare Krishna. Just see it was Krishna's trick so you all move up. we had arranged it previously. Etat samsushita brahmans. Okay, we're not going to do it. O Brahman of Vyasadeva, it is decided by the learned that the best remedial measure, removing all troubles and miseries, is to dedicate one's activities to the service of the Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So please repeat. O Brahmana Vyasadeva.
O Brahmana Vyasadeva.
It is decided by the learned.
It is decided by the learned.
That the best remedial measure.
That the best remedial measure.
Removing all troubles and miseries.
Removing all troubles and miseries.
Is to dedicate one's activities.
Is to dedicate one's activities.
To the service.
To the service.
Of the Supreme Lord.
Of the Supreme Lord.
Personality of Godhead.
Personality of God.
Shri Krishna.
Shri Krishna.
So what's the process of removing all troubles and miseries? Does anyone know? What's that? That's one of the things that decreases in Kali Yuga. It says, Tashanudinam Dharma Sattvam Shrema Shema. No. This is from the 12th canto. So,
Bhumi Gita.
Tatascha nudinam dharma, sattvam shocham daya shama, kalena kaliyar rajan, nakshat yayor balam smriti. Every day, different things decrease in Kali Yuga. Beginning with dharma, religiosity. Tatascha nudinam dharma. Sattvam, socham, truthfulness and cleanliness. Daya, mercy, shama, and forgiveness. Balena Kalira Rajan, by the strong force of Kali Yuga. Balena Kalira Rajan, Nakshantya Yor Balam, will also lose bodily strength and memory. Can I remember the verse? It's because we're losing memory. We can't remember the fact that we're losing memory. So what's the process of getting free from all troubles and miseries?
Emotional service.
What's that? Yes. What does devotional service means? According to this verse? Okay, let's read it again. O Brahmana Vyasadeva, please repeat.
Oh, Brahma.
Decided by learning that the best remedial measure, removing all troubles and miseries, to dedicate one's activities to the service of the Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna. So what's the best remedial measure?
Service to
Lord Krishna.
The service of Lord Krishna. This is Srila Prabhupada's purport. Sri Narada Muni personally experienced, we're going to find out what he experienced, that the most feasible and practical way to open the path of salvation, or to get relief from all miseries of life, is to hear submissively the transcendental activities of the Lord from the right and bona fide sources. So where are Lord Krishna's activities going on? No one knows.
in the spiritual world.
What?
Where are Krishna's activities going on right now?
In the spiritual world.
There they speak about Krishna. Chant.
Keep playing Leela all the time.
What's that?
Keep playing Leela all the time.
But where is his Leela going on?
Spiritual world?
Another universe.
Everywhere.
Another universe.
Yeah, everywhere. Are the karmis experiencing Krishna's Leela?
No.
No?
Yes.
We get it right the second time.
Yes, but they're not conscious.
What's that?
Yes, but they're not conscious. The karmas.
Yeah, everyone is part of Krishna's Leela. There's the Leela from Maya, and there's the Leela from Krishna's internal energy, but it's all Leela. One is, as Srila Vyasadeva, when he was told by Narada Muni to meditate on Krishna's Leela, what did he do? He sat in meditation, Bhakti Yogena Manasi, Samyak Pranihite Male, Apaisha Purusham Purna, Maya Chat Tad Apashrayam. So he saw Krishna in his internal energy, Bhakti Yogena Manasi, by his mind when it was linked by devotional service to Krishna. Bhakti Yogena Manasi, Samyak Samihite Male, without any fault, material consciousness. Apaishat Purusham Purnam. Then he saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead in full. Maya Chat Tad Apashrayam. And behind him he saw Maya. So Maya is not separated from Krishna either in one sense, because Maya is always with Krishna. So there's two types of Krishna's pastimes. One in the internal energy and the other in the external energy. Right now we're experiencing both. We're experiencing Krishna's pastimes in the external energy. And what is the symptoms of that pastime in the external energy? Does anyone know? Anyone have experience of Krishna's pastimes in the external energy?
Suffering.
Yeah, all the time.
That's the experience. Birth, all the glories of birth. Everyone loves it, especially the ladies like birth. Oh, it's born. Everyone's joyful. They have celebrations. Happy birthday to you. And then there's old age. Usually people don't like old age. And disease, they don't like that. And then there's death. That's the least popular. No one sings Happy Death Day to you. It's usually not the happiest day. If we lose a pen, we get all disturbed. What to speak when we lose our body and everything else that goes with it. And we get really upset. But that's Krishna's pastimes. That's his main pastime here. Mrityu Sarva Harashaham. I come as death and take everything away. So the Prabhupada used to say, if we don't surrender to Krishna by paying dandavats before the deity, then at the time of death we have to surrender to Krishna and pay full dandavats. Everyone pays dandavats at the time of death. I'm surrendered. And then one goes on to the next Leela, where one appears as an avatar called Mudha avatars. We're all Mudha avatars, full avatars. This is the only reason, so we have to hear submissively the transcendental activities of the Lord from the right and bona fide sources. So what is a right source? What is right? What does Prabhupada say? Right and bona fide. What is a bona fide source?
Coming from disciplic succession.
Yeah, repeat the same thing that Krishna said. If someone says something different from Krishna, could it be bona fide?
No.
So how do we know if someone is saying something that Krishna said? Does it have a seal of approval? How do we know if someone is saying the same thing that Krishna said?
By reading what Krishna said.
By reading, hearing.
Yeah, we have to hear from
Bonafide.
the scripture. Everything has to be coming from the scripture. So, in modern world, does astronomy come from the scripture? Astronomy. So if someone's talking about astronomy, say how the sun is moving around, or how the earth is moving around the sun, and how, so many different things. There's so many suns in the universe. Is that bona fide?
No.
What's that?
It's not bona fide.
Yeah.
The modern science is speculating all the time what is happening.
Why they get it wrong?
But we have Vedic cosmology.
What's that?
Vedic cosmology.
Yes, but why do the mundane scientists say that the earth is revolving around the sun?
Imperfect perception.
Yeah, they have imperfect senses. They cheat. They make mistakes.
They lie.
What's that?
They lie.
That's cheating. They have imperfect senses. They make mistakes. They have a tendency. What else?
Always in illusion.
Yes, an illusion. So why do we say that? Well, why do we say that our cosmology is perfect?
Because it comes from parampara.
Well, why do we say parampara is perfect?
Because it came from Krishna.
Why do we say Krishna is perfect?
Because he's
source of everything.
But how do you know Krishna is the source of everything?
I get some feeling.
in my heart.
I have some
Because he's in
feeling
my
too.
heart.
What's that?
Because he's in my heart. He's everything.
Just because he's in your heart, he's everything.
No, it's everywhere. He's everywhere.
He's everywhere.
Yeah,
Can
and they all living.
can you see him everywhere?
Yes.
You can.
Yes,
I guess-
sometimes I can
You
see.
should be giving class.
I guess I can.
So why do we accept Krishna? Do we actually, first of all, do we actually accept Krishna as God?
Yes.
Sure, right. Unofficial card carrying Hare Krishna. To what extent do we accept him, and what extent do we not accept him? I mean, who actually accepts Krishna fully as the Supreme Personality of Godhead?
Srila Prabhupada.
In general, what level of consciousness? Yes.
The one who has, who doesn't identify anymore with the body and his false ego, and he has developed knowledge and perception of Supreme Personality of God.
Yeah, the topmost devotee,
Pure devotion.
a pure devotee. And what's the symptom of a pure devotee? How do we know if someone's a pure devotee? Is there a thermometer? Is there a blood test you can take?
He surrendered.
He
He
has,
sur-
He
he had
surrendered.
no other desires than to serve Krishna.
How do we know that?
We saw it
You saw it
in his action.
in his actions. What are his actions?
He likes to chant Hare Krishna.
How do you know he likes?
Because you see how his head changes.
He's happy. He has a big smile. All right. Yeah.
That he sees everything related in connection.
How
with
do you know
Krishna.
he sees everything?
Because he's alive, fearless. And,
He's fearless. All right.
fearless.
Guy with a sword. All right, anyone who challenge me. I'm a pure devotee.
I mean, you can only see it when you're on this step. Otherwise, you can't see it.
You can't perfectly see it, but the symptoms. He's, for instance, the whole Vedic literature, our literature is filled with symptoms. Shantiya, Virakta, Virakta, Shantiya, Virakta, Shantiya, Avyartha Kalatvam, Virakta Manushunyataha, Asha Banda Samudkanta, Namagana Sadaraji. So that there are symptoms that we can observe. The main symptom is that he's always engaged in service to Krishna. Sadatam Kirtiyantomam, Itantas Chadujavataha, Namasyantas Shamam Bhaktya Nitikta Upasate. Always chanting my glories, engaging with great determination in devotional service, bowing down before me, these great souls worshiping me with devotion. So that's one of the ways. With our present eyes, we can see if someone is talking about Krishna all the time, they're always engaged in some kind of service to Krishna. There are 9 different kinds of service. And he's doing it with determination. He doesn't, if there's some disturbance, either good or bad, he doesn't become deviant. So there are so many symptoms we're supposed to learn. Shantira means he's equipoised in all circumstances. Shantira avyartha kalatvam, always engaged in service, undeviated. Viraktira, he's detached. Manya shunyataha, he doesn't take credit for what he's doing. He knows that Krishna is the doer. Shantira virakta avyartha kalatvam, virakta manushunya ashtabandha. He's always hoping to achieve Krishna. Samudkanta, and he's eager to do so. Samudkanta. Namagana Sadaraji, and he always has a taste for chanting the holy name. He likes to hear about Krishna's pastimes, and he likes to live in a holy place where Krishna has his activities, pastimes. So these are symptoms of an advanced devotee. So a bona fide source is someone who tells us what Krishna says and follows what Krishna says. But at least he must repeat what Krishna says. So to hear submissively the transcendental activities of the Lord from the right and bona fide source. So one cannot be a bona fide source, completely bona fide, if sometimes one has faith in what Krishna says, and sometimes one has no faith in what Krishna says. Sometimes one has faith in the Vedic literature, and sometimes one thinks that this is just an exaggeration. That we're living on a place called Jambudweep. Why is it called Jambudweep? You get extra credit. You get a little extra prasadam today. Why is the place we're living on supposedly called Jambudweep?
It's jumbo, big.
You've heard of Jambu? They have this Jambu.
Jumbo, big.
It's a big island.
Why is it called? See, at least you'll learn one thing today. Why, where we are, and why, what it's called. Actually, we're in some place called Bardvarsha. Have you ever heard of Bardvarsha?
Yes.
Where's Bardvarsha in the universe?
In the middle.
What's that?
Middle. Universe production middle.
In the beginning of the second planetary system.
I know you're going to learn a lot today. Varsha. How many? What's a Varsha mean?
Place.
All holy places, all holy places.
Land.
Yeah, it means land. It's a Varsha. So there are 9 Varshas in Jambudweep. And we're on Bardvarsha. Does anyone know where Bardvarsha is? What's that?
India.
No, it's not India at all.
But they call it Bharat.
Bardvarsha is part of it. India is part of Bardvarsha. Actually, we're living in a very small, according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, we're living on a very small part of Bardvarsha. Bardvarsha extends for 120,000 yojanas. Anyhow, this is, your minds are
Because
going
it's flat, Maharaj.
your minds are going to be swimming, trolling around. Anyhow, I'm just repeating what it says in the Bhagavatam. That Jambudweep is called Jambudweep because on Jambudweep, if you ever get hungry, you should know this. There's a tree called Jambu, and that Jambu, and it's 100,000 yojanas. I forget how many. Maybe it's 10,000 yojanas high. Then a yojana is approximately 12 kilometers.
Wow.
So it's approximately 12,000.
120,000.
120,000.
Kilometers.
Oh. Yeah, 120,000 kilometers high. So just imagine the fruits that fall down.
Wow.
If you're really hungry, you know. Just like if an ant, if you drop a sweet ball, the ant thinks the whole world of sugar is falling on it. So there's a tree called Jambu, and therefore it's called Jambudweep. Dweepa means an island. So this island is surrounded by salt water. And then after that there's Plakshadweep. And there's a Plakshadweep, I guess, on there. And Bardvarsha is just on the shore, there's a circle. And in the middle there's a mountain. What is the mountain called? Meru. And it's made out of? Gold. And who lives on the top of Meru? Brahma. Yeah, I think there's Brahma lives on top. Indra. There's a place for all of them. Room enough for everyone. So we think, well, this is crazy. My God, they looked through the telescopes. They never saw any mountains, you know, and the gold, you know. There's some tree, right?
Yeah.
So we don't have to accept it blindly, but we don't have to reject it blindly either. That these scientists have seen everything. They went to the moon, right? They went to the moon. They had these spaceships flying around.
That's for sure.
So therefore, Prabhupada was very much concerned about this idea that we accept blindly the material scientists. Because if we accept them blindly, then we have to reject the Srimad Bhagavatam. We have to reject, and if we reject Srimad Bhagavatam, Vedic literature, indirectly we're rejecting Krishna. That the whole world is dead, the whole universe is dead. There's just some human beings running around in this globe that's floating in outer space. and everything else is just void.
And only Earth is inhabited.
Which only the earth is inhabited. It all came out of nothing, or practically nothing. In order to explain how it practically came out of nothing, they have a book which is 10,000 pages thick, explaining how everything came out of nothing.
Big Bang.
Yeah, the Big Bang. From nothing, the Big Bang came. The singularity, everything was contained in a point so small that no one could see it. And then everything expanded out of it, and here we are now. So we accept all the things that they're saying, and then we'll have to reject the Vedic literature. And if we accept the Vedic literature, we can't exactly accept everything that they're saying. We don't reject everything that they say, because there may be some truth in it, just like there's some truth in other religious scriptures too, but we don't blindly accept everything they say if it contradicts the Vedic scripture. Similarly, there are so many sciences Krishna has given us, the science of architecture, the science of sociology called Varna and Ashram, so many sciences, and we think that these are all superfluous. They don't really exist, they're not really relevant to our modern age that we're living in, they're outdated, then we won't have full faith in Krishna. And therefore we won't follow what Krishna says exactly, because we won't really believe, we'll always be doubtful. Now we may not be able to apply Varna and Ashram perfectly in this age, but that's not due to the fact that the Varna Ashram is perfect, it's just due to the fact that we're imperfect. Just like one cannot say that calculus is imperfect because a first grader can't apply it in his mathematical skills. Calculus may be a science, but the student may not be able to apply it perfectly. So, this is the only remedial measure. The entire material existence is full of miseries. Does anyone believe that? Oh, come on, don't be so depressing. There's happiness here too.
It's fun.
Foolish people have manufactured out of their tiny brains many remedial measures for removing the threefold miseries pertaining to the body, pertaining to the natural disturbances, and relation with other living beings. The whole world is struggling very hard to exist out of these miseries, but men do not know that without the sanction of the Lord, no plan or remedial measure can actually bring about the desired peace and tranquility. So that's what we see in modern society. We're promised that by technological development, advancement, we're going to get out of the miseries of material existence. That eventually there'll be a machine for everything. As our memories decrease, as we can't remember anything anymore, we get, at the age of 20, we get Alzheimer's disease, can't remember who we are. Then they'll plant something in our brain and it'll remind us. You are Mudha Das. You must serve the masters. Oh, okay. Well. So eventually that's the whole idea, is that we're all just, as things are decreasing, technology will take over. Now you can go to school, and you can, at least in some parts of the world, you can bring your calculator. Because when they give hard things on the test, like 7 plus 5, how much is that? Oh, I forgot my calculator. Can I use yours? 7, 5. How do you work this thing? It's really complicated, high tech. So as the people are getting stupider, the phones are getting smarter. As we're losing our memory, then the memory in the computers are increasing. I remember when I bought my first computer, It had an astounding memory. It had a floppy disk, and it had 750 kilobytes.
So big.
We didn't know how to use it. It was so, so vast. We can put onto it. And then they came out with something which actually had 1 megabyte. 5,000 euros to buy a computer with 1 megabyte. Then you were considered a power user. I'm a power user. Stand back. See my machine, its prowess. And I remember some years later, not so many years, but I bought a machine. It had 500 megabytes. And I was staying in the New York temple, and there was one sannyasi staying with me. And I came back from the devotee, he was selling computers, and I came back and I had a 500 megabyte computer. And he said, how much is that computer? How many megabytes? I said, 500. He said, 500? So what do you need so much space for?
Wow. So big.
He said, what are you going to do with 500 megabytes? So as it were, our memories are getting lost due to Kali Yuga, the advancement. Because after all, from lust comes anger. From lust comes, well, actually, they left out greed. Because from lust comes greed or it comes anger. But eventually, even from greed comes anger. There comes delusion, and from delusion comes bewilderment of memory. So that's where our memories are becoming bewildered. It's because we're falling victim to the illusory energy. It's not a natural occurrence, because in other ages, people, even at the time of death, they were Shrutidars. Even in India, during Prabhupada's time, contemporary, Prabhupada gives a story that there was one Brahmin, and he was on the bank of the Jamuna, of the Ganges, and 2 Englishmen got into a fight with each other. And it wound up that they were shouting and screaming and even coming to physical blows against each other. And so the altercation, the fight came to court, and there was only one witness, it was that Brahmin. So the Brahmin gave witness, and he said word for word exactly what had happened. The whole sequence of arguments between the two Englishmen.
But he didn't know English.
Who, the
This
English?
Brahmana, he didn't know English.
Yes, that's right. The Brahmin, the surprising thing was not that he could repeat word for word what the Englishman said. The surprising thing is that the Brahmin didn't know a word of English. So that's called a good memory.
That's fantastic.
Yes. The remedial measure, so without the Lord's sanction, there can be no actual remedial measure. All these electronic devices, all these computers and these, whatever they're doing, smartphones and flying auto cars they have now. They have, I don't know. So all these things can't really bring about peace and tranquility. The remedial measure to cure a patient by medical treatment is useless if it is not sanctioned by the Supreme Lord. We should know for certain that the Lord is the ultimate sanctioning officer, and we must therefore dedicate our attempts to the mercy of the Lord for ultimate success, or to get rid of the obstacles on the path to success. Therefore, although we're thinking that by our prowess, by our good luck, by the astrology chart, everything is going to happen. Therefore, most of the sciences we learn nowadays are godless, atheistic, materialistic sciences. They have no understanding of how God works, and therefore they have really no idea how things are actually going on. And because we've been brainwashed, sometimes we accept these things as science, where actually they're simply science fiction. The whole material world is modern society is going on the basis of science fiction. Of course, they can build a building, but then, or a tunnel. Probably say, well, even the rats can build tunnels. Even the birds build nests. So they just build more sophisticated nests, that's all. So Krishna is the ultimate sanctioning officer. As it says, Balastineha Sharanam Pitaro Nishingha. That a child, the parents try to take care of it, hopefully. You never know in Kali Yuga. But hopefully the parents are trying to take care of the child so it doesn't succumb to death. But sometimes the child dies. And sometimes that the doctor gives the patient very good medicine, but sometimes the patient dies anyhow. Sometimes the boat is very strong, like the Titanic, and it tries to cross the ocean, but it sinks. So Krishna wants that the child will grow up, or the child may die. Lasineha sharanam pitaro nishingha nartasya chaganam danvato manjato now. And sometimes the medicine will work and the patient will be cured, and sometimes they'll die anyhow. And sometimes the boat will cross the water, and sometimes they'll sink and everyone will drown. So why? Because it's all due to the sanctioning of Krishna. And even if the child grows up, and even if the medicine works, and even if the boat crosses the water, everyone dies anyhow. As I mentioned that in the Titanic, that this boat crashed into the iceberg. Everything, the boilers, the heating system exploded. And the man who was working in the boiler system got covered with oil. And so when he was thrown into the ocean, the cold water, although most people died or froze to death in the water, he was covered with oil, so he survived. 1 month later, he was in New York City, and to celebrate his survival, he got intoxicated, he got drunk. And he was walking on the street, and it had just rained a little bit. And between the sidewalk and the road is what's called the curb. So the curb got filled up with a couple of centimeters of water. And because he was drunk, he fell down and he hit his head against the sidewalk, and his nose fell into the centimeter of water, and he drowned.
Yeah.
So it was his time, and Krishna arranged it. We should know the Lord is all-pervading, all-powerful, omniscient, and omnipresent. He's the ultimate sanctioning agent of all good and bad effects. We should therefore learn to dedicate our activities unto the mercy of the Lord and accept Him either as impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It does not matter what one is, one must dedicate everything in the service of the Lord. One is a learned scholar, scientist, philosopher, poet, etc., then he should employ his learning to establish the supremacy of the Lord. Try to study the energy of the Lord in every sphere of life. Do not decry Him and try to become like Him or take His position simply by a fragmental accumulation of knowledge. So this Prabhupada is explaining about the Varna and Ashram system. Actually, the Varna and Ashram system is eternal. There's the Daivi Varnashram, and then there's the Asura Varnashram. So Prabhupada is explaining about both the Daivi Varnashram and the Asura Varnashram here. As Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, the Daivi Varnashram is Chatura Vida Brajante Mam Janasukri Arjuna Arta Jignasya, Artarthi, Jnani Chava, or Artar Shiva. There are 4 kinds of pious people approach me. One of them is those who are in distress, they're the Shudras. Because they're in ignorance, they think they're their body, and therefore, because the world is full of miseries, they're always in distress, and they're always complaining, lamenting. But they're actually considered to be part of the divine system. They're part of Daivi Vanashram. Because at least by taking shelter of the higher classes, they know that they believe in God, and that they know that what they're doing is ultimately to assist in sacrifice to Krishna, Vishnu, Yagavai Vishnu. But those who are in ignorance and lamenting and suffering, they're called, and not engaged in the Varnashram system, they're called mudhas, foolish asses. And when the mudha and when the shudra, they serve the higher classes, if a mudha becomes a shudra and serves the higher classes, then in their next lifetime they can become in the course of time, they'll become a Vaishya. But if someone becomes a Vaishya and takes care of the cows and everything, takes care of the land, but then decides to enjoy his senses with the products that are there instead of offering them in sacrifice, then they become a Naradama, the lowest among men. They have the opportunity to become a person, a human being, but they've worked, they've done pious credit, they've been born in a quote, civilized country, quotes around that. But they take the resources that they get with the higher intelligence that Krishna is giving them, and they wind up engaging in sense gratification. Therefore they become what's known as Naradamas. They become actively foolish, like the monkeys in India. That there are 4 classes of people: those who are lazy intelligent, those who are active intelligent, those who are active foolish, those who are lazy foolish. So the Shudras, they're lazy foolish. But the Naradamas, they're actively foolish, so they can create horrible, unbeneficial works meant to destroy the world. In their fertile brains, they're trying to figure out how to destroy everything in the name of saving things. But if the Naradama gets good association, and the Vaishya gets good association, they serve the sacrifice, Yagya by Vishnu, that the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas arrange, then in the future they become Jignasa. They become inquisitive to learn from the Brahmins how to properly organize society and how to organize their own lives, so that they become Jignasa, or Kshatriyas. Kshatriyas are always inquiring from the Brahmins how to organize things. And if they come to the position of getting some administrative position that they decide to utilize it for sense gratification, then they're called Maya Pritigyanas. They're inquisitive about all kinds of nonsense. How to cheat people usually. How to destroy things. And if the Kshatriya, he learns from the Brahmins, does his part in performing sacrifice, then if the Maya Pritigana becomes a Kshatriya, inquisitor from the Brahmins, then in the next lifetime they become a Brahmin. Or in some subsequent life, when they qualify, they come to the mode of goodness. And they become Jnanis. They realize that we're not this body. They know the technique to realize that. But if they become Jnanis, they get knowledge of how the universe works, and they want to become envious of God, they want to become God, then they become Asura Bhavam Ashityas. Just like here it says that if one likes to preach, one has knowledge, then you should utilize that knowledge to preach in Krishna's glories. You don't become a Asura Bhavam Ashitya, a demon, and try to decry Krishna's existence, proclaim that oneself is Krishna, is God, is the Supreme, that we know everything. So there's a system of raising people to Brahman realization, to becoming an actual jnani, to understand that I'm not this body. But even when it comes to that platform, one may declare oneself to be God, that I'm the savior of everyone. I know everything. I'm perfect, powerful, and happy. And one becomes a demon. So we shouldn't be proud if we have some knowledge. We should know that this is just one step of surrendering to Krishna, to find out that we're simply a tiny, insignificant servant of Krishna. Trying to become an atom at his lotus feet. Now, if one is administrator, statesman, warrior, politician, etc., then one should try to establish the Lord's supremacy in statesmanship. Fight for the cause of the Lord as Sri Arjuna did. In the beginning, Sri Arjuna, the great fighter, declined to fight, but when he was convinced by the Lord that the fighting was necessary, Sri Arjuna changed his decision and fought for his cause. So if one wants to arrange things, one should arrange things for the Sankirtan movement, for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to spread Krishna consciousness. That should be the intelligence. That's how to properly utilize the intelligence. If one has administrative capacity, try to arrange things that the actual knowledge of Krishna consciousness can be distributed. Ultimately, to convince people that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Arrange the art, the theater, the music, the cultural revolution, spearheaded by transcendental knowledge in Srila Prabhupada's books. Convince people that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which means that we're not the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sorry for the bad news. Think, if someone is a businessman, industrialist, agriculturalist, then one should spend his hard-earned money for the cause of the Lord. Think always that the money which is accumulated is the wealth of the Lord. Wealth is considered to be the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, and Lord Narayan, and the Lord is Narayan, or husband of Lakshmi. Try to engage Lakshmi in the service of the Lord Narayan and be happy. That is the way to realize the Lord in every sphere of life. So the Vaishyas are learning that everything belongs to Krishna. It's called Karma Yoga. And the Jnanis are learning that everything should be utilized for Krishna's service under the direction of his representatives. That's called Jnana Yoga. And the Jnanis have the opportunity, the actual Jnanis who have knowledge, they have an opportunity to engage, to learn that everything should be done to please Krishna. So they're potentially the Bhakti Yogis. Where Krishna says at the end of that chapter, Tesham Jnani Nituta Eka Bhakti Vishishite. Because they're not the real Jnanis, their purpose of serving Krishna is not to get something, fruit of results, or to understand things more clearly. They've already accepted that Krishna is God, and they're simply trying to please Krishna. They don't want to find out more and more about how powerful Krishna is. They want to find out how to please him, that's all. So the Vaishyas, again, they're learning that Krishna is the proprietor. The Jnanis, or the Kshatriyas, the organizers, they're learning how Krishna is the organizer, the controller of everything. And the Jnanis are trying to engage in Krishna's loving service, to please him and to glorify him. That is the way to realize the Lord in every sphere of life. The best thing is, after all, to get relief from all material activities, engage oneself completely in hearing the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. Sounds rather boring, right? Give up, sit there and just hear about Krishna all day long. But that's the best thing. But because we're not so much inclined to do that, even to sit in the class for an hour is torture sometimes. But that's the goal, is to be able to, when we hear about Krishna, one who's actually absorbed in Krishna consciousness, then one is actually in the spiritual world, feeling unlimited love and pleasure just by hearing about Krishna. There's no difference between hearing about Krishna for a self-realized soul and for actually being in the spiritual world. But we're not on that platform necessarily. Therefore, in the case of an absence of such an opportunity, one should try to engage in the service of the Lord, everything for which one has specific attraction. That is the way of peace and prosperity. So we like to accumulate wealth, then try to engage that wealth in Krishna's service, and then we'll make advancement in the modes of material nature, and at the same time we'll become purified. That's how we'll make advancement in the modes of nature, because we'll get Krishna's association. And Krishna is purifying, because we're engaged in sacrifice to Krishna. And if we have the tendency to want to organize things under superior direction, then we'll also get Krishna's association, and we'll raise up to the platform of actual realized knowledge. And then we'll have no other goal, save and except to act in Krishna consciousness, just to satisfy Krishna. And then the Lord's promise is that such a devotee will surely go back to him. The words Samshushitam in the standards are also significant. One should not think for a moment that the realization of Narada was childish imagination only. It's not like that. It was so realized by the expert and erudite scholars. That is the real import of the word Samshushitam. So we don't Vana ashram in this age, even if it may later on be developed. We are engaged in some Vana ashram if we simply utilize whatever our tendency or propensity is to help to serve in the Sankirtan movement. That is the perfection of Vana ashram, Yagya Vaivishnu. If we do that, automatically all our duties of Vana ashram will be satisfied. But if we're not engaged in distributing the Sankirtan movement, then better to live in a farm and to try to act, work according to some kind of rules and regulation. But that won't work either in this age, unless we're living in a farm and hearing and chanting about Krishna regularly. Because our minds will be filled with so many, we'll take our material minds with us, and we'll wind up, looking for some enjoyment. Looking, who are you listening for? Oh, it's Prabhupada's lecture, and you hear, something, Led Zeppelin or something going on. So we can't escape the Sankirtan movement in this age, and that will take even if we try to utilize some of the aspects of our ashram, but then eventually applying them for those who don't actually want to engage in the sacrifice for Vishnu, through the spreading the Sankirtan movement and participating into it. But for right now, those who are attracted to our movement are generally attracted to it simply because they're attracted to Krishna consciousness, chanting the holy names, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, etc. So Varnashram is not so important for us at this particular time, but when we actually can spread the Sankirtan movement, and people won't want to engage in the Sankirtan movement themselves for one reason or another, then we can also engage in the Varnashram so that they remain progressing towards a human form of life, where one day they can understand the importance of the Sankirtan movement and participate in it. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions? Comments? Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj, for the illuminating lecture. I never delved into the cosmology of Vedic planetary system and these descriptions of Bhumandala, Jambudvip and everything because it was too esoteric. So could you maybe just illuminate a little bit, how can we perceive, because we don't have that perception that there is Mountain Meru of gold and there is oceans. We only see with the scientific investigations that it's different. We see airplanes flying. How to explain it? Is it multidimensional or what?
My opinion on it, or what I can see from it? Oh, it's not multidimensional at all. It's there, but we can't see we can't even see so many different things. Actually, we can see things, we just don't accept it, that's all. And there's always someone coming up with something trying to defeat it, however illogical it may be. As far as seeing Mount Meru, we can't even see the tip of our nose right now. but to seeing Mount Meru. We can't see beyond Bharatvarsha. It's supposed to be quite large. Even this little place that we're in a little part of Bharatvarsha. But we can't see because we have no experience. As far as what the scientists tell us, how can we accept anything that the scientists tell us? Because they're all cheaters. I mean, if they're, for instance, when 69, I think they went to the moon. Is that when I was a devoted at that time? I didn't even know they went to the moon like 3 or 4 years later, supposedly. Because we never read news, we didn't read newspapers, we never listened to the radio, there was no television, so we didn't know anything. In any case, if you look at the moon landing now, it looks like, 1969 television station with a lot of static, where you couldn't really tune into the program. But then when you see some of the photographs later on, like when astronaut, he lands on the moon and he sticks the flag, the American flag, into the moon. And then suddenly the flag starts waving. Now there's supposed to be no atmosphere on the moon, so there's no wind. But the flag was so ecstatic that it, out of ecstasy, it started to shiver. And we're supposed to accept that. They made so many mistakes, that were just foolish mistakes.
I totally understand that part of the science and these whole things that it's like wrong and concocted, but how to properly understand it? Because if you see the plane flying above America to India again and this and that.
No, we don't. What do we see? Every time I'm on an airplane, you look at, it's all flat. I've never been on an airplane and see any curve. Everything that you see is curved. When you say you're on the ocean, you're on the shore of the ocean, you see the boat disappear, right, over the curve. But if you go up higher, you see it's actually flat, depending on our place of observation. Sometimes it appears to be curved, but if you go up higher and see it from a higher perspective, you can see it's just flat. There was no curve.
So is Earth flat?
What's that?
Is it Earth flat or round?
It doesn't make any difference, but all we can say is that our perception right now will not tell us. But if it was round, say it was round, then if you had a flat surface, an actual flat surface, and if you were standing here and you had a flat surface, supposedly, well, let's say you're standing here and then you saw a city, say, 100 kilometers away, you should be able to see the city. Because if the Earth's curving, it should be curving, and then the city should be further down so you couldn't actually see the top. You can only see maybe the top of the building. But if you're able to observe a city from one place on the Earth to the next, then either the city's going up on a mountain, but if it's not going on a mountain, it's supposedly on a flat plain, you should be able to observe it. So that's one indication, the fact that the Earth would be flat. Now there may be other things that they say, and it can get into a whole confusing thing. But according to our Srimad Bhagavatam, the 5th canto, Priyavrata Maharaj, that the Earth is called Bhumandala, and the Earth is supposed to be flat surface. And he made oceans, concentric oceans, and then you had Jambudweep, you had Plakshadweep, Samandadweep, you had all these different dweepas, saltwater ocean, this and that. So whether or not it's true, but from our observation, this Earth, if you want to really get into and study it, there's an ample evidence to prove that the Earth is flat, although they may come up with their evidence, however valid it may not be or what, photographs from their space station, whatever it is, and we can debate about these and waste of time. But the fact that there is evidence that supports the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the conception of the Earth being Bhumandala. But we don't want to get into a whole argument with people because that's not our purpose. It's just that we should be satisfied that our Srimad Bhagavatam is not some quaint book that was written by some ancient sages who had no knowledge of science, who just gave us their superstitions or their speculations.
This is the main point actually, because it destroys the faith if you don't understand it properly, and that I just went over it and just put it aside. I cannot dwell on it, so but it would be really nice that somebody can explain it to because we are indoctrinated with this Western thinking and logic.
Yeah, therefore some study is necessary, and biased study. The problem with our modern ISKCON, one problem maybe in our studying, is that we're conditioned souls. And what are we conditioned by? We're especially conditioned by what people think about us. We're always worried whether they think we're sane or we're crazy. And if you go against modern science, they think you're a lunatic. They have, what do they put? Dunce's cap on you? You're ostracized from society as being insane. So it's very difficult to preach when you're, number one, it's difficult to preach when people think you're a lunatic. You believe in the flat earthers.
There's many now, Maharaj, who appeared, people who really try to prove that the earth is round, and they're calling them, they give them names, the theoretics of flat earth.
Yeah, the flat earth.
And they have some good, there was never a picture of round earth, ever, It was always from parts, made of parts, never as round.
And now it goes into the whole thing. In other words, the reason we have our difficulties figuring these things out, not necessarily because it's so difficult to figure out, it's because we're entering into the whole thing with so much bias. Even our so-called science and our intelligent devotees, we're always worried about what people think about us. And Prabhupada has some concern about that too.
But we have this Prabhupada book also, Traveling to Another Planet. There is his planning something also.
Yeah, I mean Prabhupada
it's good book, about it's good. There is explaining many things.
Yeah, many things. So Prabhupada did many things.
Yeah.
Because according to time, place, and audience, he was preaching. And his main thing was to convince people to chant Hare Krishna, and that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So sometimes according to the time, place, and audience, he said they went to Rahu. Sometimes they said they went to the Arizona desert. Sometimes he said if they went to the moon, there are people on a different dimension there. Probably different things, in order to not distract people from our real mission of Krishna consciousness. On the other hand, there is a reality. It's not that they all are the same. Going to the Arizona desert, going to the moon, going to, not seeing people in a multiple dimension, etc. There is a reality to the whole thing. What it is, that's what we're supposed to know, so that we can preach accordingly. It's not that we give up preaching according to time, place, and audience, and go around and tell everyone, that they never went to the moon, and make that our main emphasis on preaching. We should know the whole picture, the reality, the sub-realities, so that we can preach appropriately according to time, place, and circumstance. So that will take some study. Most of us don't have time, but those who actually have knowledge or the ability or the interest in investigation, they should have a broad vision of the whole thing. Now, one symptom of the fact that we don't have a broad vision is we argue with each other over these things. And we make that the main focus of our engagement. We fight with each other.
Maharaj, but we can see.
That was patience. So these things should be investigated by those who are capable of investigating, and should be conclusive on all different levels, to be able to explain it to all different types of people, what will be appropriate to them, so that we can actually present Krishna consciousness in a way that will be acceptable to the intellectuals, to the common people, to everyone else. So we have to become equipped to do that. That means in all the sciences, whether it be Ayurveda, or Jyotirveda, or Dhanurveda, whatever, then there has to be at least some experts in these fields that we can present Krishna consciousness as a practical solution to the modern demoniac, atheistic, materialistic, technological society. Otherwise, how do we explain that Krishna You know, when he was here, he was herding cows. There were no factories. You know, they were driving around in bullock carts. How do we explain that? If Krishna is God, then why is he so primitive? So we have to be able to understand it ourselves, otherwise we would understand the whole thing thoroughly. Or else we'll become bewildered thinking that people are making advancement, like polluting by polluting the air, polluting the water, polluting the food, polluting people's minds. We think they're making advancement because the whole emphasis is on external sense gratification instead of internal development of consciousness, ultimately loving exchanges, like in Vrindavan. So we have to, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of things we have to become convinced about. Namely that this world is also Krishna's, part of Krishna's creation. And Krishna is completely in control of it. And that he's given us all the sciences necessary to be happy and peaceful here. And when we deviate from them, we simply create problems for ourselves and others. Yes?
You told the question in the beginning that do we believe in Krishna, that he is Godhead? So it's a good question for all of us. So sometimes I speak in my name, I have a problem or fall down in my consciousness, and I'm shaken. Is he Godhead the biggest or not? So sometimes happen, and I ask myself why this happened.
Well, because when we contemplate the objects of the senses, we develop attachment for them. As soon as we forget Krishna, then we're going to have to look for happiness somewhere. So we look around. Maybe this will give me happiness, that will give me happiness. We forget that Krishna is the controller, he's the proprietor, and he's the enjoyer. If we forget any one of those things, then we want to become the proprietor. We want to become the controller. We want to become the enjoyer. And we look around to see what we can do, and then then the material nature takes over. We're put into illusion. We forget Krishna and everything else in relation to him. We lose our spiritual intelligence, and then we do something which is not in Krishna consciousness. That's how the material nature works.
And the biggest problem I don't have with people, they are not intelligent and conscious. I have problem with people, they are intelligent and conscious on their path, yoga path. So they say, all of them, no, Krishna, no, I don't want to say that.
So they're Maya Pritagyanas, or they're Asma Bhavamashis. The knowledge has been taken away, stolen by illusion, or they partake of the atheistic nature of the demons. So they've done pious activities, they follow Krishna's instructions in their past lives, come to that position, or Krishna's representatives, their instructions. But now they've turned against Krishna. They realize our highest standard, living in sense gratification. They've turned against, they become envious of Krishna. And they won't follow his instructions. Yes?
We can see that other planets are round when we look at the telescope. So
No, we didn't say, I don't know, if it's round or
the sun is round, the moon is round.
Yeah,
Everything is
but
round.
that's different. There's planets.
Jupiter is round.
Something. Yes.
Saturn is round. He has a ring.
You want to keep on going, or you want me to answer? Any other planet, you know, that's right.
Ali.
Yeah, well, that's Vedic cosmology. Bhumandala is the biggest in the universe, but surrounding, on top of Bhumandala and on the bottom of Bhumandala, there are different systems. There are 9 planetary systems. So on top, there are planets, such as Jupiter, Saturn, etc. They're explained, they have their orbits. Actually, they don't have exactly that. They are circumambulating with the Bhumandala. But it's the sun that's going around the universe. What exactly the sun looks like, or what exactly Jupiter, you know, what we see with our naked eyes is, you know, they're planets, but that's what it says.
So where does the sun go in sunset?
Why is it? Because why does the sun disappear from our vision?
Yeah, we see it go
Because
down. I was in the beach so many times looking at the sunset and the sunset.
So many things look like they're going down. If you're on the beach and you see the ship over the horizon, looks like it's going down, it disappears. But if you go up in the air, further into the air, then you can see actually the ship didn't disappear. It's still following a flat plane. Depends on your perspective on things. So from our perspective, due to the nature of our perceptions, it appears that the sun's going down, but actually the sun is just moving away from us. But due to our insufficient eyesight, we can't actually see where the sun is because it's disappeared from our vision.
It doesn't become smaller. It's just the same size going.
It's always the same size. Well, you're looking at a different sun than I'm looking.
And
So-
also, I wish to ask about the eclipse.
Anyhow, you can ask us so many things, but ignore it.
No, because
The
they
sun-
say Rahu eclipsed the moon, and
Yes,
scientists
yes,
they
yes, I
said
know.
it's
Yes,
the shadow.
you're right. But I think we're going to stop here. Thank you very much. Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam, Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai.
With my sunshine.